So if you don't want to use a pre-made one, you could always make your own soil mix. It's really just a matter of preference. There's no right or wrong way to do it. And the ingredients I use are just the ones I currently have or the ones that I want to try out. As long as you have a soil amendment for the drainage and you have a soil amendment for retaining moisture and maybe some nutrients like earthworm casting or any slow release fertilizer, then you're pretty good. It's up to you to play with the ratio. With me, I'm not using any nutrients today because I don't have any earthworm castings, but I do have several materials with me, like this. This one is peat moss that I already pre-moistened. The thing with peat moss is you buy them dry, at least when I did. I bought this in bulk last year for my outdoor garden, and it's dry and it's very difficult to get wet, and of course it's not the most sustainable option. This one is cocoa coir and cocoa husk. I got this from Costco. This is actually supposed to be mulch, but I think I could use it for my soil mix as well. Over here I have some perlite. Again, there's a debate whether perlite is sustainable or not, so it's up to you whether you want to use it. And there's also vermiculite, which is my first time trying this one. This one probably costs as much as perlite, so if you don't want to use perlite, you could try this one as well. Some orchid bark right over here, and this one's orchid bark mix. It's also mixed with some pumice and some horticultural coal. So like I said, when making your own soil mix, it's really up to you what the ratio you would like to be. If you just stick to a 50-50 ratio or 1:1 ratio, you're pretty good. But if you have multiple ingredients like this, where you want one part of your soil mix or a half of your soil mix will be the one that retains moisture and the other half that provides aeration and drainage. So with this one, since the only material that I have for retaining moisture is peat moss, this one's going to be like 50% of it, or maybe 40-30%, and the rest would be the other amendments that I have. The cocoa husk is a 50-50. It does provide aeration, but it also could hold moisture, so it's kind of like a sphagnum moss in that way. I'm gonna take this. This for now. Sometimes the orchid bark comes with large pieces. I either break them down or just get rid of them because they're too big for my houseplants. And a little bit of perlite. Oh, a lot of perlite. So as you can see with the ratio of this one, vermiculite, perlite, orchid bark, peat moss, and cocoa coir / cocoa husk, it's kind of like a 50-50 proportion. I would add a little bit more peat moss. So this one with this mix is kind of a little bit more like my aeroid mix, but if you wanted to make it a little bit more of a tropical mix that retains a little bit more moisture, then add a little bit more peat moss. And I'm gonna sprinkle a little bit of Epsom salt. So this is the only plant nutrient that I'm adding to this. I'm gonna sprinkle some Epsom salt, which will be like the only nutrient that I'm gonna add into this. So this will provide like magnesium. And then just mix them all up. There you go, that's my soil mix. And because the peat moss is pre-moistened, I don't feel the need to re-moisten this. But if I'm going to re-moisten this one, I'm going to use a nutrient water or water that has liquid fertilizer in it, since I don't have any nutrients in here except for the Epsom salt. But that's pretty much it, and I could use it to plant any houseplant that I want. So here's another one that I need to repot, my Rhaphidophora tetrasperma. It has been rehabbing in the sphagnum moss because it did experience root rot back in December. So now it is ready to be repotted into its permanent home, which is this 6-inch terracotta pot. So since this one is kind of like with the anthurium, it has been in sphagnum moss rehabbing. So this is more of a transplant than a repotting. but it's all the same and it's all good. And just be careful with taking out the moss. Sphagnum moss can be reused as long as you treat them, I guess. Like make sure, like, treat them with boiling water just to make sure there's no pests in it and whatnot. But kind of like with Anthurium, if you have a hard time getting the moss off the roots, then don't force it because you don't want to damage the roots. It's okay. And since it's going to be in a terracotta pot, I don't mind it having sphagnum moss. That will help it retain moisture a little bit, especially now we're heading into the growing season. So I think this is good enough for me because, like I said, I don't want to damage the roots. This one, because the drainage hole is too big, I would want to put something underneath to help the soil not escape that drainage hole. So I'm going to put a layer of the sphagnum moss back at the bottom. That will help it with retaining some moisture as well. And I'm going to put a little bit at the bottom. And then put this one here. So as you can see, this one already came with a moss bowl. So I'm just going to do that like that. And then backfill it. And then I would shake it down just so I know every crook and cranny is being filled with soil, and as to also properly anchor the plant. So with terracotta pot, it's a good thing. It has like a line, so you kind of know where you should fill it up to, and you don't have to like guess. But tie this one up so that it's properly anchored in the moss bowl. There we go. There you go. And then here's the Super Thrive again. I'm just gonna put a drop in this water and then water the plant very slowly so that the soil don't erode or overflow out of the pot. And it's draining out, so that is good. So even though I kept a lot of the sphagnum moss in there, you can see that it is still very much well draining, and it's in a terracotta pot, so that is a good thing.